But in their scientific evaluation of why these missiles went down, there was no reason they could think of as to why these missiles went offline. But it's a fact that it was during the sighting of this UFO.
So this is early 50s. This is really...
Well, this is 67.
That was 67.
That's 40
but it's
years
still
ago.
during the Cold War.
You bet.
If they had thought that it was the Russians, you can bet that they would have started launching
that's right.
missiles
That's
at the
very
Soviet
serious.
Union.
And this story continued in 1975, in November of that year, in the northern part of the United States and into southern Canada. There was a series of just absolutely awesome, incredible violations of military airspace by UFOs, which are very well documented and have no explanation. Some of the documents describe these objects as possible helicopters, quote unquote. But the fact is that none of these objects were identified as helicopters definitively. And in fact, they didn't. The only way that you could say they behaved like a helicopter is by the fact that they hovered. Okay, but in fact that they were either silent or nearly silent, which a helicopter is not. They hovered very provocatively over nuclear weapons sites at these Air Force and military bases. In several cases, prompted major base alerts in which military police are traveling around, the sirens are blaring, and it was a big deal. And then these objects would typically just glide off. In a couple of cases, in one case specifically at Wurtsmith Air Force Base in Michigan, which is now closed, an Air Force carrier was vectored in to go after it. This, I think it was a C-130, a big aircraft, was coming in and was told by the air base to chase after this thing, which had just left the base, and they said, okay, we're going after it. And this object played cat and mouse games with them. They eventually had to turn around because they were low on fuel, at which case the UFO chased after them and sped by them, doing more than 1,000 knots speed, which is
kind of
it's fighter jet speed. But yet this same object had been hovering previously over the base, and then again at Malmstrom Air Force Base once again in 1975, there were two successive nights in which the object, this huge glowing object, was seen over the base. On the second night, the object went way, way, way high up, high altitude, tracked by NORAD. We've got that on record. F-106s were sent in to get this thing, and every time the F-106s got into the area, according to the witnesses, the object winked out and was gone, and then came back once the F-106s were gone. We have all of this on record. What could that be? Could that be some kind of hallucination? Well, doesn't seem likely, especially when you have NORAD confirming this on radar. So there was something there. Is this not serious? Of course it's serious. How could this not be serious? And so we have, many cases of UFO encounters like this that there's no way on earth that it could not be a serious thing for a responsible military officer. So, yes, I think there's more than sufficient reason to argue this is a big
Are there any
deal.
of these kind of cases in the post 9/11 world?
Indeed, there are.
Has there been any change in in patterns of sightings? Or
No,
anything?
Henry, the pattern is the same. Now, the one difference that we have is that really, even since the 1980s, Ronald Reagan issued an executive order in 1982 that took a lot of the wind out of the sails of the Freedom of Information Act and made it much more user-unfriendly and primarily made it a lot more expensive. So with the result being that it's harder to get government documents out on UFO encounters, but that doesn't mean we don't have cases, and good ones. There is one very good case in July of 2002, this is post 9/11, of an attempted intercept by two F-16 jets right outside D.C. of a mysterious blue object that many eyewitnesses on the ground saw and called into their local radio station, WTOP, which issued a press release on this. That was then followed up by the Washington Post, which interviewed some Air Force personnel who confirmed that indeed there was a jet chase. It's a funny case because the Air Force then said, well, they could have been chasing any number of things without saying what those things could have been. I mean, I would like to know, what blue object could this be? What object could be blue that outperforms the pursuing F-16s? According to eyewitnesses, the object descended the sky at an 80-degree angle and stopped, at which point F-16s were chasing after it, and then the object just zoomed, took off, and was gone. So vastly outperforming F-16s. And you know what? This is such a typical kind of case. It's happened hundreds, not dozens, not scores, but hundreds of times, where our best aircraft just can't compete with whatever these things are. So if this is another human agency, that's a concern. And if it's a non-human agency, well, that's also a concern. So, the thing that a UFO skeptic needs to keep in mind is, don't think that you're just going to answer this right off the bat. Just keep in mind that there is a true, genuine, unexplained mystery here that strongly seems to involve a technology, somebody's technology.
As you were describing this long series of things since the late 40s up till recent years of these objects appearing over sensitive military installations in the United States, I was thinking about all those poor people who are traveling and having to take their shoes off and having to take their belts off,
right,
and having to have all of their bags gone through, and they get to their destination and they get a little note on the inside saying that their bag was searched. We have all of this going on, and yet, once again, it's the public itself that's being made the enemy. The terror is...
Boy, that is so true. That is so true. And what's even more galling about it is that these objects... I've talked to many pilots, and the pilots would encounter these more than you think. And they're not at liberty to talk about it. There have been a number of instances where these objects really look like they pose a genuine air safety hazard. There's been more than one case of these objects coming at an airliner, like directly at an airliner, and then to veer off at the last moment. It's a terrifying experience if you're a pilot, or even if they're not coming at you at an intercept, they might pace you for a short period of time and get uncomfortably close to you. There was a case, about a decade ago, in which right outside London, there was a missile-like object zipping by a commercial airliner. Now, this might have been an alien craft or not. I don't know what it was. But once again, it was impossible to get any kind of government openness from the British government on this. Heck, there's things flying around here that are dangerous. And some of them appear to be controlled in a very intelligent way. They don't all look like missiles, by the way. So do we not have a right to know? I fly, you fly. We're over the ocean sometimes. I want to know if there are objects that I need to be concerned about. So there's a lot of dimensions to this. And here we are, right, we got to take our shoes off because I'm supposed, or, I can't carry toothpaste because I might have explosives in my freaking toothpaste to blow up the plane. And meanwhile, you got these other things going on that are vastly more important. God forbid that you bring toothpaste on your flight.
On your flight, yeah. Well, that about wraps it up for this week. We would like to thank Rich for sitting down and talking with us. The trouble is that the book, UFOs in the National Security State, is just so rich in detail. And it also is rich in feeding speculation as to the real nature of our reality here. We could go on and do this again, and I hope we'll have Rich back so we can continue this discussion another time.
I sincerely hope so. It has been my great pleasure and honor to be here.
So thank you for joining us. And if you'd like to discuss any of these things, you can come to our website at www.signs-of-the-times.org. You can participate in the forum. There's a link from the homepage, the Signs page.
And I'd also like to note that we now have a forum in Spanish and also one in French.
So, once more, thanks to Rich, and we'll see you next time.
No more